This is what I should look for.
Chief Moose says the FBI also prepared a profile. It too concluded that the killer or killers were most likely to be white. Authorities also considered the possibility that it was a team, a man and a woman, with the man in charge.
We thought, well, if it's two men, they'll be too busy fighting over which one pulls the trigger.
The authorities never had enough confidence in their portrait of the killer to release it to the public.
For us to put a profile out in this case would have been irresponsible. We were not going to put any information out there that we couldn't back up.
A Rambo wannabe or even somebody...
However, broadcasters are under no such restrictions.
They do have some responsibility for how the public perceives it, how they react, and speculating in this case was incredibly harmful. And I think it hurt their credibility to some degree.
Everybody is nervous, but we are responding to those fears.
Chief Moose wonders if all the media speculation affected his own investigators.
Did police officers, witnesses listen to the talking heads in the sense of it's a white male and just look right at Malvon Muhammad but didn't see him? Some of these things we'll never know.
As news reports kept on describing the probable suspect as a white man driving a white truck, the real killers, two black men in a dark Chevy, closely monitored the coverage. And they seemed to enjoy the terror that they were creating. The 3rd of October, 2002.
Our schools are safe. Our children are safe at this point.
Only 4 days after Chief Moose made his pronouncement, the DC snipers shot and critically wounded 13-year-old Iron Brown outside a school in Maryland. At that time, many asked the question, were the snipers watching and responding to media reports about the case? The answer is yes.
It's clear from the evidence they watched television. We have videos of him watching television in a restaurant. We're very interested in what was being said.
After we aired the story about children being safe at school, he shot a child at school. After we aired the story about pumping your gas, I mean within hours, he shot somebody pumping gas. Personally, as a reporter, it made my blood run cold.
In fact, the killers left a taunting message on a tarot card after wounding the young boy.
The tarot card had our first opportunity to try to communicate with whoever was doing this.
In responding, Moose tried to draw the sniper into a dialogue. He referred to the tarot card's "Call Me God" statement.
I hope to God that someday we'll know why all of this occurred.
Here's the school shooting scene.
Then the media revealed the existence of the killer's coded message. The controversy raised the question, should news outlets broadcast confidential information during an unfolding murder spree? The answer is, it depends. The journalists feel they acted properly, in the public's best interest.
In some concrete piece of evidence, I think that you can make the case that putting out that information might have been a public service.
I know that the task force had a fit and was pretty angry, but someone involved in that investigation wanted that information out because there's only one way that got out, and that's if someone leaked it.
But authorities insist that journalists and their sources were jeopardizing the only link to the killers.
Leaks are a part of the business. But in a case like this, where there's a message, do not release this to the press. Someone intentionally did it. It bothered me deeply.
Confronted with the leak, Chief Moose appeared to be angry with reporters.
So I beg of the media, let us do our job.
But his public response had a hidden purpose.
They were called today.
The anger certainly is designed to say to the perpetrator, we're trying to work with you here. We want to stop people from dying.
Soon, Moose is communicating openly with the snipers.
We have researched the option you stated. Call us at the number you provided.
This raises the question, why did Chief Moose negotiate with the snipers in public? The answer, according to the chief, is that this strategy increased the odds of catching the snipers.
We were always hopeful that through communication, we would be able to solve the case, we would be able to stop some of the killing, we would be able to eventually take him into custody.
In fact, for several days, Lee Malvo had tried to get the attention of the authorities. He called police on the 15th of October, sounding almost desperate to prove he was one of the killers.
We have called you 3 times before, trying to set up negotiations. We've got no response. People have died.
Yes, sir. I need to refer you to that Montgomery County Police hotline. We're not investigating a crime. Would you like the number?
3 days later, Malvo appeared outraged when he finally got through to Officer Derek Belials.
The male voice on the other end said, "Shut up and listen. I've got some information for you and don't ask any questions." He proceeded to tell me that he knew who our snipers were, but wanted to know what we knew about a shooting that had occurred in Montgomery, Alabama.
Belials immediately contacted authorities in Alabama. He discovered that there had been a fatal sniper-style shooting there the previous month. Investigators reviewed evidence from the Alabama murder. The snipers, meanwhile, continued to stalk their prey. The 19th of October, they seriously wounded a man outside the Ponderosa Steakhouse in Ashland, Virginia. The 22nd of October, they killed a bus driver in Aspen Hill, Maryland. By then, investigators had matched a fingerprint found at the scene of the Alabama shooting to Lee Malvo's immigration records. At about the same time, the FBI interviewed a man in Tacoma who had called the FBI hotline. He had told them about an old Army friend who had stayed at his home with a Jamaican teenager. The guest's name was John Mohammed. Mohammed had referred to the younger man as the sniper. The two spent time in the back garden test-firing a Bushmaster rifle, the same weapon that the police had shown on the television. A team of investigators raced to Tacoma, hoping to discreetly search for evidence. This video, shot from a local news helicopter, shows how wrong they were.
I saw that on TV. Could have fallen off our chair when we saw that.
Says the agents were looking for bullets.
I can't even describe the feeling that I had when I saw that.
A computer search links Mohammed's name to a dark Chevy Caprice, the same type of car described early on in the investigation by eyewitnesses and publicly dismissed by the police. For the time being, the authorities do not tell reporters this new twist. They worry that if it becomes public, Mohammed and Malvo will go into hiding. Once again, the media are a step ahead. Journalists get a description of the suspect's car from listening to police radio bands. Was it reckless to broadcast this information without police approval? In fact, it could have been disastrous. The broadcast of the information does enable Whitney Donahue to identify the car and alert police.
The license tag was publicized by the media, and it took 90 minutes after it became public for those two individuals to be found. I think that reveals the power of the publicity and the message.
However, at this critical moment in the investigation, the report could have helped the snipers escape.
What if the snipers, instead of being asleep in the car, had actually been awake, listening to the radio, driving? They hear the report, they ditch the car, they get another car, easily could have gone the other way.
When the authorities arrest Mohammed and Malvo, they recover a wealth of evidence that connects the two men to the sniper murders. Now the investigation turns to what is perhaps the biggest mystery of all. Why did they kill? Coming next on The Final Report. Autumn 2003, Virginia. In separate courtrooms, John Mohammed and Lee Malvo go on trial for a murderous rampage that terrorized people in the area around Washington, D.C. for 3 weeks. Paul Ebert prosecutes 42-year-old John Mohammed. In a separate trial, Robert Horan tries 18-year-old Lee Malvo. The lawyers share a common strategy: to tell jurors that Mohammed was the controlling mastermind and that Malvo was his bright and willing accomplice.
No question that Mohammed was a dominating figure in this killing team. But Malvo is an individual much smarter, naturally smarter than John Mohammed.
He's not only smart, but he's cunning. He's a thinker. As a matter of fact, I would estimate that most of the planning that was done in this case, and locations where they did the shooting, he was the thinker behind most of those.
According to the law in Virginia, prosecutors don't need to prove which man actually pulled the trigger.
Legally, it doesn't make any difference because they had to operate as a team. We felt that from the circumstantial evidence that Muhammad perhaps was the so-called captain of the killing team.
As Horan and Ebert build largely circumstantial cases against Muhammad and Malvo, they begin to unravel the biggest mystery. Why did they kill? The answer, according to the prosecutors, is anger, greed, and revenge. It's likely that their killing spree actually began in Tacoma, Washington. The 16th of February 2002. Prosecutors believe the teenaged Lee Malvo walked up to this house where he shot and killed 21-year-old Kenya Cook. They say Malvo did it on behalf of John Muhammad. The dead woman's aunt was a friend of Muhammad's ex-wife, Mildred, and took her side when the couple divorced. It was a bitter struggle in which Muhammad lost custody of their children. Afterwards, Muhammad allegedly called his wife an enemy and threatened to kill her. Mildred Muhammad moved to the Washington, D.C. area to get away from her ex-husband.
I personally believe that he came to this area thinking he's going to kill his wife.
But Robert Horan says several other factors motivated Muhammad and Malvo to launch their killing spree.
They truly believed that they could intimidate the government into giving them millions of dollars.
It is likely that they had hoped to extort money through terror. In his early conversations with police, Malvo also hinted at another motive. The young man claimed that he hated white people whom he felt had threatened Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan. Prosecutor Horan believes Malvo pulled the trigger for many of the killings, an instrument for the older man's anger. Early in 2002, Muhammad spent weeks training Malvo in sharpshooting techniques. The teenager was a naturally skilled marksman. Together, they turned this aging car into a killing machine. They scouted locations with good sight lines and then murdered people who simply had the misfortune to be there. Prosecutors say Malvo helped the older man keep track of the killings on this laptop and maps found in the car.
I think they took a lot of pleasure in being snipers. They would even document that as they went along. And there's no question that they listened to the media, read the papers. They keyed on what the media said.
The 17th of November 2003, a jury convicts Muhammad of killing 53-year-old Dean Myers at a petrol station in Manassas, Virginia. 1 month later, on the 18th of December, another jury finds Malvo guilty of the murder of Linda Franklin outside a Home Depot shop. For his crime, Muhammad is sentenced to death. The jury sentences Lee Malvo to life in prison without the possibility of parole, in part because he was a juvenile at the time of the killings. The killing spree in the October of 2002 revealed how easy it is for two men with few resources to terrorize an entire region. Now, the final report. We examine the actions of those involved in the DC sniper case. First, the killers. What began as revenge on Muhammad's ex-wife evolved into an extortion plot, fueled by racial hatred.